Question. My I Am Presence sends my conscious self into the material world to raise the level of consciousness. But if my I Am Presence is in the spiritual realm, why would it do this? It already has a high level of consciousness. Otherwise, it would not be able to raise the level of consciousness. I'm not quite sure what the questioner means. Does it mean that the I Am Presence sends the conscious you into the material world to raise the level of consciousness of the material world, which is part of why it does it, but the I Am Presence also sends the conscious you to raise its own level of consciousness. And I think this is probably what the person isn't quite seeing, because as I explained in my video about how the world was created, and in other videos, the I Am Presence resides in the lower level of the spiritual realm, yes, but it isn't an ascended master. And so it actually sends the conscious you into the material world, into the unascended sphere, in order to raise its own consciousness as well, by the conscious you experiencing what you can experience in an unascended sphere and experimenting with its co-creative abilities. So I have explained that we start on what is called natural planets, where there isn't the murder and mayhem that we see on Earth. And as we are growing, we are both raising our own consciousness, but we're also raising the energy level of the natural planets until these planets can ascend. And I explained in my video about how the world is created that the purpose of an undescended sphere is to reach an ascension point where it becomes permanent, but it does that by the beings in the sphere ascending by raising their consciousness. But on an unnatural planet like Earth, there are many spiritual beings who are as what I call avatars. I have a whole playlist called the Avatar Psychology where I talk about this. And we have descended here to help raise the level of consciousness of the Earth because, as you can see by just looking at the headlines on any day, Earth is an unnatural planet where there's all kinds of conflicts and suffering. So we are partly here to help raise the collective consciousness. But we do that by raising our own consciousness, which the conscious you does by walking the spiritual path, where we're gradually increasing our sense of connection to the I Am Presence. But as we are going through this, the I Am Presence is also experiencing what we are experiencing, and therefore raising its own consciousness. So it's a twofold process there. And I understand that if you look at some previous Ascended Master teachings, Summit Lighthouse or the I Am movement, they kind of presented the I Am Presence as almost like a godlike figure that knew everything and could do everything and could grant us favors. A little bit like the wish-fulfilling God. And this is just not the highest understanding of the I Am Presence. And that's why the Ascended Masters through me have given progressive revelation about it, that the I Am Presence is an evolving, a growing being, a self-transcending being, and it isn't ascended yet. We are, and this is what can be a confusion, because where did your I Am Presence come from? It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was created out of the being of some Ascended Masters. So the I Am Presence out of their own being creates your I Am Presence. So your I Am Presence is connected to these Ascended Masters, who are Ascended beings, right? But it's just that the I Am Presence is not yet ascended. So this is the process I explain in How the World Was Created, that the Creator, out of its own being, creates these self-aware beings in the first sphere. That ascends, they become ascended beings. Out of their beings, they create the beings in the next sphere, and this has continued until our sphere. So yes, the I Am Presence is very closely connected to the Ascended Masters who created it, but it isn't itself an ascended being. It becomes that by sending the conscious you into the unascended sphere, and when the conscious you then returns to oneness with the I Am Presence can ascend and become an Ascended Master. It's not really that the teachings given through me are contradicting what was said in previous movements, but it just explains it in a slightly different perspective.